Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name
여러분
is
안녕하십니까? 저는 배경숙이고요. 이번 세션 호스트입니다. 여러분 만나 뵙게 돼서 매우 기쁘게 생각합니다. 지금부터 경제 성장과 발전이라는 주제를 가지고 패널 1을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 각 연사마다 7, 8분 안에 발표를 하시게끔 되어 있고요. 연사분들께 시간을 꼭 지켜달라고 부탁드리고 싶습니다. 그러면은 지금 화면을 좀 봐주십시오. 화면에 보시면은요, 여러분께서 가지고 계시는 의견이나 질문을 실시간으로 회의 진행 동안에 올리실 수 있습니다. 트위터 사용자시면은 지금 보이시는 해시태그를 사용하시면 됩니다. 이번 패널 토론의 좌장을 소개해 드리고자 합니다. 영국의 Culture, Communication and Creative Industry 장관님이신 에드 페이지 장관님을 모시도록 하겠습니다. 따뜻한 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다.
Thank you very much. We have a very distinguished panel.
네, 감사합니다. 저명한 패널 분들을 모시게 되었는데요. 일곱 분께서 지금 준비가 되셨습니다.
또 가급적이면 여러분 모두께 흥미로운 세션이 되기를 바랍니다. 그래서 여러분들이 발표 중에 박수도 쳐주시고 하면은 아주 활발한 그런 세션이 될 것 같습니다. 한국 장관, 브라질 장관, 나이지리아 기업인, 한국 기업인, 또 덴마크 규제기관, 일본 규제기관에서 다양한 견해를 개진하실 것이기 때문에 여러분들의 찬성 의사, 또 반대 의사 적극적으로 표현해 주시면 아주 흥미로운 그런 세션이 될 것 같습니다. 여러분들 다 동의하실 것입니다만은 여러분들이 논의를 적극적으로 해주셔야지만 논의가 활발하게 될 것 같습니다. 또 영어로 모든 세션이 진행되게 될 것 같습니다. 그렇게 되면은 또 이번 세션이 더 원활하게 진행될 것 같고요. 이번 패널 토론은 경제 성장에 미치는 인터넷의 중요성이 되겠습니다. 제가 인터넷의 경제 성장에 중요하다라고 하는 말로 시작하는 연설에 대해서 $1만이라도 이렇게 준다라고 하면은 제가 큰 부자가 될 것입니다. 하지만은 그렇지가 못하죠. 하지만 전 세계 비즈니스를 우리가 변화시킬 수가 있고 또 개방적이고 자유로운 인터넷을 열어서 서로 교역도 자유롭게 할 수 있고 사람들이 인터넷상에서 혁신을 할 수 있도록 한다 하는 것은 바로 그러한 시대를 만들어감에 있어서 매우 중요하다고 보겠습니다. 토론을 시작하기 위해서 윤 차관님께 미래창조과학부의 차관님께 개회사를 해주시기를 부탁드리겠습니다. 윤종록 차관님.
감사합니다. 웨이지 장관님. 오늘 이 자리에서 사이버 스페이스 관련돼서 저희 한국에서 어떻게 바라보고 있는지에 대한 의견을 나눌 수 있게 되어서 매우 기쁘게 생각합니다. 오늘 오전에 안 그래도 박근혜 대통령께서 함께 참여하시면서 또 연설을 통해서 여러분께 많은 정보를 전달하셨습니다. 취임 이후 박근혜 대통령과 또 그 정부는 창조 경제를 화두로 제시를 해왔습니다.
The legacy economy in Korea was manufacturing and production. So last 50 years, our economy has quite successful growth through the manufacturing industry. But as the time goes, our growth rate is not increasing anymore, and also our job, the job chance is decreasing also. That's why we raise an issue of creative economy. So to realize the creative economy, I personally think we have another planet. So I think we have two planets. The first one is the planet we are stepping on, and the other one is another planet, the cyberspace. Even though it's not invisible, it has a great capabilities for the new economy. So very fortunately, last week, the ITU, International Telecommunication Union, announced that Korea ranked the #1 in the ICT Development Index. So we are very proud of that, cyberspace as far as the Korean government is concerned. So I think we have to encourage our, cyberspace dynamically. So we need two elements to increase our cyberspace much more dynamically. The first one is a software-oriented society. So we are going to emphasize how the software industry could be more dynamics, can have more dynamics compared to the last 10 decades. So we are going to promote our young generation, especially the primary school students. We are going to teach software-related education from this winter. So we are preparing that kind of new strategies. And also, we need some globalization. As you know well, we Korean society as a whole, we don't speak English as an official language. So we are going to provide a very special gateway where they can provide, any kind of legislation-related services, taxation services for the countries throughout the world. Another one I want to raise an issue is the ICT industry is mostly focused on the network industry. But I'm going to expand the ICT industry from network itself to the other different sectors like CP and D. C for content business, and P is for platform business, and N is network, and D is for device, plus S for security. Because the security agenda, security issue is very, very crucial for the invisible cyberspace. So that's why this kind of a new organization and the forum are expected better than ever. And another one I want to raise an issue is vitamin project. Human beings need sometimes vitamin whenever they have some problem. Just like that, the society as a whole, as a country, they also need some kind of different vitamin. For example, vitamin A for agriculture. So we can promote, or we can increase our productivity of agriculture through the ICT and the science and technology. And the other one, for example, is vitamin E for environment. To solve some environmental issues, we need lots of money. So we have to prepare some solutions preventing the kind of environmental issues. So that's why we need another combinations of science and technology plus ICT and some difficult issues of the environment or something like that. So vitamin project in Korean government is very dynamic project for the reducing our cost for the future or reducing our welfare budget. That's expected to increase day by day. Actually, last 10 years, last decades, or I'd like to say an internet economy 1 year. And next decade, I'd like to say an internet economy 2. So what's the difference between internet economy 1 and 2? Internet economy 1 of last decades are mostly focused on the internet for the people, right? So only the people can use and utilize those internet facilities. But I think the internet economy too, for the next decades, is not only for the people, but also the internet of things, right? So any kind of things you have, like your cap, your shirt, or your shoes, any kind of things are expected to be connected to the internet. So I think that kind of machine-to-machine or Internet of Things could expand our economy for the next decades. So I think another issues for the M2M is security issues. So Internet of People, we also have security issues, but Internet of Things, the internet security issues are much more crucial because human beings are quite adaptable whenever some problem happens. But in case of machine or some sensors, they are not quite acceptable or adaptable for the tolerance of the internet security issues. So I think in the cyberspace, as the time goes, and at the era of the machine-to-machine or Internet of Things, that kind of security issue is very important. That's why I'm going to add security industries on top of the CP&D. So CP&D plus S could be another very important issue. So as a conclusion, I'd like to raise that the another space, cyberspace, is very, very crucial for the Korean economy. And as far as the GDP is concerned, 12.3% of our GDPs are dependent on ICT. And as far as the export of Korean economy is concerned, almost 27%, 28% of our economies are based on the ICT industry. So that's why we are going to emphasize the cyber world for the next decades of our economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister. I was fascinated by what you had to say. We too are trying to transform our curriculum in the UK to get kids, people learning computer code in our schools. And also, of course, you raised the important issue of the Internet of Things. So we talk about the Internet as being a medium for people to communicate, but obviously in the next few years there's going to be an explosion of machines communicating, which is why it's so important to have open standards and an open internet to make that new internet economy work. So thank you very much. In terms of enterprise and innovation, our next speaker is Bosun Tijani. I should say that some of us on this panel are slightly jet-lagged, and we've had a bet about which one would flag first, but Bosun seems full of energy. And he is the Chief Executive of the Co-Creation Hub. He flew in from Nigeria last night. The Co-Creation Hub in Nigeria is supported by a British trust, Sainsbury's, but as well as Google and others. And I think he's going to give us a fascinating insight into what is happening in Nigeria. You can do it sitting down if you want. I think we're taking a relaxed approach now. Although there is a big pillar in the middle which prevents people, a lot of people seeing you. It's entirely up to you, Bosun, whether you want to do podium or... Oh, okay. Bosun's got a presentation, so he's going to do it from his podium.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Minister. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try to stay awake because I'm really struggling. But then, let's see, it's 8 minutes, and I believe I've got something to share with you from our experience in Nigeria. Okay. If I get out to work this, help out. All right, that's 1 minute out of my time. But nice. So back in 2010, I co-founded the organization which is known as Co-Creation Hub. Co-Creation Hub is a social innovation center, and our thinking and interest is actually around looking for ways to accelerate the application of social capital and technology. And by social capital, simply, we were looking for ways through which we can sort of harness the benefits of getting talented individuals within our society and organizations with different expertise to collaborate using technology and merely solve social problems that could drive us forward as a society. So the focus was strictly for us on economic prosperity. But along the line, while setting this up, we realized that an important part of the journey in trying to drive economic prosperity is good governance. Okay. Is good governance. Without good governance, clearly, will struggle to sustain economic growth without good governance.
This one go forward, and this one is.
Okay?
Yeah.
Nice, thank you. So it became a reality to us that an important part of driving economic growth is actually good governance. And it's also interesting across Africa, I think this is no longer news, that more and more citizens are now demanding for transparency and good governance across the continent. Partly due to the fact that there's now more information available to people, but also the fact that technology tools built on top of the internet can easily now amplify people's voices. So people who traditionally won't come to the usual traditional stage to talk about or demand for good governance can sit behind Twitter or Facebook and say a lot about good governance and demand for good governance and actually drive more people's attention towards the need for good governance. But for us, we also discovered that this was becoming an issue. So we tried a bit to sort of understand good governance from the perspective of how good governance is now being measured across Africa. And we looked through the Mo Ibrahim Foundation Good Governance Index, which basically talked about good governance around the delivery of public goods and services to citizens by government and non-state actors. And something that that popped out of this for us was the fact that good governance is actually not the sole responsibility of government, but also non-state actors, and for us, talented individuals within the society who can actually come up with interesting ways and novel ideas through which we can leapfrog development on the continent. So good governance also talked about safety and rule of law. So these are the key areas through which good governance is measured by the foundation. Participation and human rights, sustainable economic opportunity, and human development. So we started to look at it from a different angle. So perhaps using the internet and mobile technology to drive government and ask for transparency and good governance was one way. But the other way for us then became if we could actually encourage non-state actors and talented individuals to also participate in coming up with interesting ways to provide public goods and services, to better education in our society, to provide information, health information to people in remote places. Perhaps we can then get more people working with the government and supporting them to move our nations forward. So we decided what we were going to do was to build a community of people who believe in the power of technology, people with different expertise and resources, and people who believe that collaboratively we can actually begin to solve problems. So back in 2010, a few organizations supported us to kickstart the vision, mainly the Sainsbury Family Trust in the UK, the Omedia Network in the US, Google, Nokia, Samsung, and a few other organizations. And gradually we started by building a community that we weren't sure how and where it was going to go. We just thought we'd throw this out there. People were used to demanding more from government. Are we sure people would actually think of themselves as solution providers as against people who just demand for more? But surprisingly, after about 12 months in the market, our community grew to become one with over 2,000 members, people mainly from different walks of life, software developers, technologies, even people from within government, all the major technology businesses, the big companies that you can think of in Nigeria, became a part of what we started. And today, we have close to 30 ventures or initiatives that are part of our community. And as a community, what we simply provide is an innovation center, which is a place where people can work out of, a place where people can share resources, and a place where people can collaborate to build solutions. So some of the solutions that are popular from the hub, just giving 4 examples, and you can see the diverse nature of these solutions and the kind of things they're trying to solve within the society. So a popular one is one that is looking at budget transparency. And this one in particular came from the perspective that for us to drive our society forward, the ordinary citizens will need to understand the sort of resources that is available to the government to deliver public goods and services. And when we have a good understanding of it, we'll actually then be able to hold the government accountable. But funny enough, another thing they discovered was actually the fact that the lawmakers also lack a good understanding of how to interpret budgets. So this venture is now a civil society, a key player within the civil society organization circle in Nigeria. They not only support or encourage citizens to look deeply into budget, but they also work with the government to help lawmakers interpret budgets. Another one is a project which is focused on education. And simply this project is looking at using mobile phone to promote individualization within secondary school in Nigeria. So giving access to content to students out of school and helping students to also take control of their own learning. Another one which is interesting in the area of e-commerce is called Tracklist. And this is a group of software developers. They've decided to build what you may call the Amazon of Nigeria, simply a software where any retailer in the country could get their wares online, and they get promoted, and they can now actually sell to people from any corner of the country. And the fourth one, which is also interesting, was started by a lady, and this is simply an incentive-based recycling venture. So they incentivize people to gather waste and to recycle, so people actually make money from their waste. All these were initiatives started by individuals who believe that good governance should not be the sole responsibility of government. And all these people saw the power in the use of technology to drive the economy forward. And in particular, I'd like to mention that technology in this case, because of the lower barrier to entry and the ease of starting on the internet, a lot of these people were actually able to start with minimum resources. And also from the community that we've developed, so this is a building that we're located in. This building is situated in the Yaba area of Lagos State, if there's anyone here who know Lagos. And this is where you find the universities in Nigeria. The design school, the popular design school is in this location as well. The vocational training school is in this location. And when we started, we were actually situated on the topmost floor of the building. But today, we're occupying 3 floors, and the 4th floor is meant to open at the end of the month. Again, 7 technology ventures focused on solving social problems in Nigeria. And part of our plan, working with the government, strictly led by the private sector, is to actually secure the whole building and convert it into a tech center of excellence for technology startups. And beyond that as well, the neighborhood is actually now being considered for what you may call the Silicon Valley, not necessarily replicating what's been done in the US or anywhere else, but more or less building an aggregation where people can share resources to leapfrog development, because we understand that the penetration of the infrastructure that we need cannot be everywhere in Nigeria. But when like-minded people come together in a location, they can easily pool resources and share resources and actually make the government supply infrastructure to that location for a starter. So in this location, the government has given us a waiver on the right of way to lay the fiber optic cable, and a private company, because of this, is laying the cable, and the cable is meant to be finished by the end of November. So these, again, will be to the benefit of entrepreneurs who believe that technology can be used to leapfrog development in the country. Finally, what we keep telling people, which I've probably repeated, is that good governance encompasses not just government, but also the civil society, the systems, the procedures and processes in place for planning, management, and decision-making. And as such, individuals, especially in developing countries, should not just demand for transparency and accountability from government. They should do, but at the same time also look for ways to contribute. And to government, we keep saying fostering sound public judgment through engagement of citizens is a key instrument for them to create better governance. Thank you very much.
Bosun, thank you very much. We, in the UK, we have Tech City in East London, which is, we've turned into a focus for our digital and creative industries. So what you're talking about in Lagos chimed with me. And thank you as well for articulating so clearly the importance of a multi-stakeholder approach to internet issues, making the point that government doesn't know everything, and the more players you bring in, the more likely you are to get innovation. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, who may or may not speak from the podium, depending on his mood, is Sergo Lee, who is the co-chief executive of Kakao Corporation. And for those of us who are not from Korea, I can tell you that this is an instant messaging service with 110 million users and 5.2 billion messages are exchanged every day, with the average Korean user sending 120 messages a day. So I don't know where you get the time to drive this amazing economy in Korea, because you seem to be spending so much time on Kakao.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sergu. I'm sure there's a lot of people from overseas and who've never heard of our product, but currently 97% of all smartphone users in Korea use Kakao Talk, and so it's very famous locally in Korea. Today, I'd like to introduce you to our journey of our company, introduce the history and the services that we offer, and hopefully set kind of an example of how creative economy through internet and mobile can create economic value. Our company was founded almost 7 years ago by a gentleman by the name of Brian Kim. Brian was the founder of hangame.com back in 1999, which was the world's first internet game portal site. That eventually merged with naver.com to form Korea's largest internet company, NHN. And Brian served as the CEO of NHN for about 4 years, and then the startup bug kind of bit him again. And so in late 2006, he formed a new startup company with about 10 people called iWe Lab, which is the predecessor of Kakao Corporation. And if you think back then in 2006, the mantra was Web 2.0. Everybody was talking about doing Web 2.0 services. It was all about being open, sharing information, user-generated content. And so in line with the times, iWe Lab spent about a year preparing for a Web 2.0 service. The first one launched in 2007. It was called brew.com. It was a social bookmarking service. We spent about a year trying to prepare this service, but had to fold the service because nobody was using it. And then we took a second stab. We prepared another year, came up with a social ranking service called Wizia.com. And this also didn't go very, very far. And so by the end of 2009, everybody was very depressed. After spending 3 years and 2 failed services, everybody was wondering whether we should pack up and just go home. But then something wonderful happened for us, looking back. The first smartphone device was introduced to Korea in November 2009. This was 2 years later than the US. And you know, if we had succeeded, if we had a kind of a mediocre success in our web services, I don't think we would have made that switch. But we saw this as an opportunity. And so we decided painfully to throw out all the coding we did, all the web services that we did, and move into a new area from web to mobile services. And of course, at the time, we didn't know exactly what would become successful. And so we divided up our 12 employees into 3 groups and had them develop an application, each having to do with communication. And the first one, KakaoTalk, which became very popular, is a instant messaging service, one-on-one messaging. You can do a large chat groups, but it was a private messaging service. We also developed Kakao Ajit. This is a group communication tool. And also Kakao Suda, which was a public. It's like a mobile Twitter, if you will. If you post something on Suda, everybody can see it. And these 3 services launched in March of 2010. But just after 2 months, it was kind of evident to us that the most popular service was KakaoTalk. And so we drew our resources from Ajit and Suda and focused on KakaoTalk. So after launch, it has been about 3.5 years. And I'm happy to report, like the minister said, we have accumulated 110 active users. About 32 million of them use our service each and every day. And we service about 5.2 billion messages each and every day. Compare that with the amount of SMS that was being sent right before we launched our service was about 300 million. And now with this user base and with this social graph, we are positioning ourselves to become a platform, a mobile social platform, if you will. We have learned that the average Korean KakaoTalk user has about 180 KakaoTalk friends, which, like Facebook friends, acts as a very powerful tool in spreading content and other services. And so we dared to become the world's first mobile social platform. And the centerpiece is our KakaoTalk friend social graph. Surrounding that graph, we've launched various different services. On the top left, we have Plus Friends, which is an advertisement model. You can add products, services, brands as your KakaoTalk friend. And if we do that, we can send advertisement, very targeted messaging advertisement to that user. And so we've kind of developed that as a mobile advertising tool. On the top right, we also have Kakao Story, which is a Instagram-type photo sharing service. And that's doing very well. We also pioneered kind of an experiment with games, mobile games. Mobile games, before we launched on our platform, wasn't a very big market. The largest revenue-generating game before we launched grossed about $2 million a month. But after we launched the games, because we have such a concentrated user pool, we could multiply that revenue by 15 times. Some games were generating $1 million a day. And so we're using this as growing this into a mobile platform. And if we look back and see, aside from what we as a company did to generate and create this new market, I think there's 2 keys to success from the government's point of view. First is the high-quality telecommunication network. Without this world-class high-quality network, companies like us could not provide services. So it was very fortunate for us to have a government with the foresight, to have the government and telco companies invest heavily for a very long period of time to construct a very powerful and high-quality network system. The second is a strong entrepreneurial spirit. Of course, I'm not talking about individuals, but how the governments can stimulate and encourage young entrepreneurs to form startups. And I think it's very fortunate that this government, the current government, is putting in a lot of effort so that companies like us will be able to flourish in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergey. It's fascinating to think that the first smartphone really came on the market only 4 years ago, and they are now so utterly ubiquitous that I cannot be without mine, even during this panel session. Also, your points about obviously an important digital infrastructure resonated with me, because in the UK we have an ambitious program now to roll out broadband to everyone, supported by government, and also government providing an entrepreneurial environment. And again, but I think the core point is how quickly things change, that in 4 years this extraordinary internet-based economy has been created by the smartphone, which is why one needs flexibility and openness so that innovation can adapt to these changes. But regulation is also important, and governments have media regulators, and one of the most experienced regulators is with us today. We're very pleased to have from Denmark, our second jet-lagged speaker, Jørgen Abild Andersen. He's chairman of the Committee of Information, Communications and Computer Policy at the OECD, but he's been very senior in the Danish regulatory environment for more than 20 years, even though he looks so young. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Very flattering. To be honest, I'm not the Danish telecom regulator anymore. I just stepped down, but that was after, as you say, 21 years. And very often at events like this, I was introduced as the longest standing telecom regulator on the planet. That was the words of Bill Kennard, the former US-EU ambassador. Every time that happened, I corrected, and I said, I'm the longest surviving regulator in the world. But anyway, I'm still the chair of the OECD Committee on the Digital Economy, this is a very interesting job, even more interesting, as a matter of fact, than being a telecom regulator. The scope is much broader. This afternoon, I want to convey two messages to you and then elaborate a little bit further on the two messages. The first one, which brings another dollar into Ed's pocket, is that the internet is an essential infrastructure and core component of economies. You become a very rich man. The second message is that ensuring further growth requires commitment to international cooperation, multi-stakeholder consultation, and openness. This is why I think it's important to say today that OECD plays a very significant role in that context. The OECD has 34 member countries. It helps governments to develop better policies. It promotes policies that will improve the economic and social well-being of people around the world. It is a forum, a place for dialogue and sharing experiences, and it seeks solutions to common problems. To do this, you have to be very keen on measuring, comparing, and analyzing data. This is of paramount importance. Today, I will speak about the Internet and OECD's principles for Internet policy making. But before this, some general remarks, which I think maybe bring another dollar into Ed's pocket, but still it's very important to mention these issues. You could ask the question, why are we so concerned about the Internet in OECD? We are concerned because the Internet brings about innovation, growth, new jobs, and it improves productivity. Coming from Europe, I want to quote Vice President Neelie Kroes, who is the commissioner in the European Commission responsible for the digital agenda, she said last year, and I think it's very well put by her, ICT is responsible for half of Europe's productivity growth and 1/4 of EU's GDP growth. Another important thing illustrates the growth potential of the internet. A McKinsey study carried out for a G8 meeting a couple of years ago stated that the internet has generated as much growth over the past 15 years as the Industrial Revolution in 50 years. And looking back 5 years, the internet was responsible for 21% growth in mature economies. And the same study finds that the internet also creates jobs, more jobs than it destroys. Actually, the internet has created over the last 5 years 2.6 new jobs for each job displaced. 2.6 instead of 1. That is remarkable. And when talking about jobs and growth, I'll give you an example from the booming app economy. I don't know when you first heard the word app economy. Did you hear about the app economy 10 years ago? No. I think that Minister Vasey just talked about his smartphone from 5 years ago. But when you look at the app economy of the United States, this is a $20 billion industry, and it has created a little less than 500,000 new jobs that didn't exist before. Amazing. Look around the world, look about what is the importance of the internet in that context. We already heard a couple of examples, very good examples, by the way. So in conclusion, during the past 2 decades, the internet has become a key platform for innovation and economic growth. By fostering the free flow of information, it has increased transparency, opened new territories, and, as a consequence, lowered entry barriers to market and created new business opportunities, as we just heard. Its open nature has also facilitated inclusion. Anyone can develop new applications and services that, in turn, can be used anywhere in the world. The OECD has a long history in how best to promote the dynamic nature of the internet while at the same time protecting privacy, security, and intellectual property. Against this background, the OECD Council adopted the recommendation for internet policymaking principles in December 2011. It contains a set of 14 principles that call for a holistic approach to internet policymaking. Overall, the principles are nothing but what you could call a sort of compilation of best practices of countries who have been successful in developing their internet economy. So you could say nothing new, but rather sort of best-in-class principles. I will not read all these 14 principles aloud, but just show them to you on the screen and make a couple of comments to some of them. The first 2 ones, promote and protect the global free flow of information and promote the open, distributed, and interconnected nature of the internet. I have a case which I will share with you in a couple of minutes. Number 5, I want to mention in particular because it has been touched upon a couple of times, the importance of the multi-stakeholder cooperation in policy development processes. This is questioned these days, and those who are familiar with what happened at the WICET conference in Dubai in December and also at the WTPF in spring this year will know that there are some considerations about whether government influence in the processes should be enhanced and that ITU should play a stronger role. This is not the recommendation from OECD. The OECD has a very strong belief in the multi-stakeholder model as it is. It can be improved, and I can elaborate further on this in the final discussion if you wish. Strengthen consistency and effectiveness in privacy protection at a global level. I want to draw your attention to the revised OECD privacy guidelines, which were adopted by the OECD Council this summer. It's a remarkable achievement. The old guidelines were 30 years old, but we succeeded in having them revised, and please take note of this. This is a very important piece of work. I want also to mention number 11, promote creativity and innovation. This is under this umbrella that we are talking about the importance of releasing public sector information. There is an enormous economical potential in open data from the public sector. In Europe, it has been estimated to amount to 140 billion euro annually. It's remarkable. But we have some discussions with our ministries of finance around Europe, and these are not finalized yet in all countries. The case which I mentioned would be about the first two principles, and it'll touch upon the challenge of openness of the internet versus taxation. And you could say, promote if you want more of something, tax if you want less. And here you have the example with the goose that laid the golden egg. Are internet taxes the new golden egg, or the country do short-term tax generation measures on the internet economy risk stunting longer-term economic growth? A delicate question. I have an example here from Ghana, and I don't know whether there is anybody from Ghana present. This is not, I have nothing against Ghana. On the contrary, as a Dane, we have very friendly relations for many, many years, in particular the period between 1650 and 1850. So this is not against Ghana, but still this particular case shows that when you want to make a Skype call to Ghana and compare it with a Skype call to the US, there are substantial differences. To the US, it's 2 cents per minute, and to Ghana, it's more than 30 cents per minute. I should not go into details. If you put a tax on internet connectivity, this will lead to dropped consumption, and you are badly hurting the internet as an economic driver. And this can be seen on the next slide, which is about a decision to impose a tax in Congo-Brazzaville. And again, I have nothing against Congo-Brazzaville, but the example is a very good one. You can see a substantial drop in the number of messages following this introduction of attack, and also the number of minutes dropped significantly. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. My earlier remarks about getting $1 for every time somebody pointed out how the internet contributes to the global economy was not meant to put off making very valid points, which you did in your presentation, particularly about the app economy. And in fact, I think Apple did a survey recently which showed that something like 500,000 jobs have been created in the European Union as a result, which again I think shows this importance of the internet providing job opportunities not just in the countries where, say, the particular company exists, but also job opportunities all around the world. And I thought you also made some very telling points on how potentially heavy regulation, particularly in the form of taxation, can stifle the kind of innovation that consumers want to see and can take advantage of. So thank you very much. Our last jet-lagged speaker is Virgilio Almeida. He is the Secretary for the Information Technology Policy from the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation in Brazil, and he's going to stand up and invite us all to the World Cup next year.
Okay. Well, good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and just to remind that the World Cup next year is going to be in Brazil. And to the Koreans, remember that last Saturday we had a great game here in Seoul. So hope that it happens again in Brazil. My goal here is to answer 3 questions. Why cyberspace is vital to Brazil? What do we do there to manage the cyberspace? And what are the future plans for the cyberspace from the standpoint of Brazil? So just to put that in a context, Brazil is a large country with almost 200 million people, and 50% of the population are on the internet. So it's a big market, right? The second point is, as I said, it's a large territory. It's a country that is a big food producer, oil producer, and it has, as I said, almost 100 million internet users. It's the 8th largest CCTLD country in terms of numbers, and it has a GDP around $2.5, $2.6 trillion. The Brazilian government has done a lot of initiatives to increase the penetration of the internet in Brazil, and the outcome was positive. We see a growing number of internet users, and we see that this increase in the number of users is a direct consequence of public policies, such as non-expensive computer for all, the national broadband plan, the land house legal framework in the past. So these were past initiatives that helped to increase, to make the cyberspace bigger in Brazil. And the point is that one of the challenges that we face there is to increase the innovation in the economy and in the society and in the government. And ICT is key to innovation. It's a vector that leads innovation to the different aspects of the society. So the cyberspace is vital to Brazil. Another interesting aspect of the Brazilian society, it is that Brazilians are open to new technologies. A recent article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal shows that Brazil has, at that time, in February of this year, 65 million Facebook users. Actually, it has now more than 75 million Facebook users, which makes Brazil the company's second largest market after US. And also Brazil is the biggest market outside the US by the number of unique visitors to Google. So people like technology. They say in Brazil that people, the 2 most important things for the Brazilian are cell phones and fast food. That's what they say today. So it's an important thing, the technology. So the question is, how can we use the technology to improve innovation, to reduce social gaps, to improve the quality of life in the country, to make the economy more innovative? These are questions that we need to answer, and we need to act in order to achieve these goals. One interesting characteristic of Brazil is that the way that we do internet governance there. In 1995, long time ago, the Brazilian government created a committee called the Internet Steering Committee, which was a pluralist commission to do internet governance at that time. In 2003, that commission was remodeled, and elections were introduced to select the stakeholders' representatives. And this Internet Steering Committee in Brazil is responsible for coordinating and integrating all Internet services and initiatives in Brazil, as well as to promote technical advances and the dissemination of services. But what makes it unique is the composition of that system, of that Internet governance model, Internet Governance Committee. This committee has 21 members, 9 members from government, and 12 members from the society, elected by their respective bodies. So government has 9 representatives, the private sector, academia, NGOs, they have 12 representatives. So what calls our attention here is that government does not have the majority of the votes. Everything has to be negotiated when it concerns the internet. So the negotiations in order to achieve a minimum consensus. So we have here nine ministries represented in that committee and 12 people from the society. And why is that important? This committee reflects the different interests and concerns of different segments of the society. And that is reflected in the initiatives taken by government. Let me show you some characteristics of the legal framework in Brazil. Congress is working to approve what is called the Civil Rights Framework, or the Internet Bill. Also, the government is preparing a new bill to be sent to Congress, which is the Personal Data and Privacy Protection. 2 years ago, an Information Access Act was implemented by government, making all the information, government information, open to public. And the Internet Steering Committee has 10 principles for the Internet governance, and they are freedom, privacy, human rights, democratic and collaborative governance, unaccountability of the network, neutrality of the network, functionality, security, and stability. So we will see something interesting here. These are some important issues for the future. This Bill of Rights is being discussed in Congress, and it includes net neutrality as one of its main points: right to privacy, protection for the right of freedom of expression. It also restricts data retention and access to logs, so preserving the privacy of the citizens. And also there is one proposal in this bill that is a consequence of the recent revelations of surveillance and monitoring of Brazilian companies, Brazilian authorities, and Brazilian government. It's the internet companies must store locally gather data inside Brazil. So that's the proposal that's being discussed in Congress. Concerning cybersecurity, which is one of the main topics of this Cyberspace conference, we want to foster local industrial policies in order to have local or suppliers that we can trust. We want to use government procurement policies to foster the development of trustful technology for networks. And we will increase investments in science and technology for cybersecurity. So what we have for the future, in addition to this? In order to make the cyberspace bigger in Brazil, these are 8 important points for this plan: to accelerate the execution of national plan for broadband. As I said, Brazil has a large territory, and to extend the networks to areas such as the Amazon is very, it costs a lot, and it's very difficult, but that's one of the plans. We need to reduce the cost of IT devices and equipment in order to increase the percentage of the population that has access to the cyberspace. We want to optimize IT and internet by business. Actually, we selected some priorities or some application areas that are critical for the development of Brazil. For instance, we have selected areas where Brazil is competitive, such as oil and gas, mining, food production, and banking. And also, we selected areas that are strategic for the country: healthcare, education, and defense. So we are going to incentivize the production of software technology for these specific areas. We are going to increase investments in IT research and development. We have a big concern to increase the formation of human capital for the IT sector. Just to give you a number, the ICT sector in Brazil represents 6% of the GDP, which is this ICT sector is responsible for $200 billion in terms of market. We are going to foster the implementation of cloud computing in Brazil and strengthen the country's cybersecurity in order to reduce its vulnerabilities. So these are the main points that I wanted to present here. Thank you.
That was a fascinating talk. Thank you very much. And also to hear and understand that Brazil has adopted the multi-stakeholder model for more than almost 20 years is fascinating to hear. So you are one of the leaders in supporting the multi-stakeholder model that people see as being so vital to our open internet. So thank you for leading the way. Our next speaker comes from one of the 4 countries on this panel that have qualified for the World Cup. The question at the end, which I will pose, and you can give me the answer at the drinks party, which is fast approaching, is which country on this panel has not qualified for the World Cup? And there'll be a free drink in it for whoever can tell me that. But this country has qualified, and it is Hisao Izuka, Chairman of Telecoms, ISAC Japan. I should say that we're bumping up to 7 o'clock, and I do want to get some questions from the audience. Strong hint there.
Thank you, Minister Baisi. And Okay, see. Today, I'll talk about the increasing dependence on ICT in today's economic and social environment, and more importance of information security under such circumstances. Also, I want to introduce our several initiatives for cybersecurity through public-private partnership. In this slide, I'd like to mention Japan's highly advanced ICT infrastructure and its contribution to economic growth. Wider coverage area of ultra-high-speed broadband, lowest access fee per unit speed, and the world's earliest transition to 3G show that Japan has the most advanced ICT infrastructure in the world. And such infrastructure and related industries considerably contribute to economic growth in Japan. These figures indicate ICT plays a key role in growing economy. The left figure shows ICT industry hold the largest ratio of Japan's GDP among industries. And the right figure shows that ICT industry contributes positively to real GDP rates, even when real GDP shows negative growth. But frankly speaking, in terms of progress level of ICT utilization, Japan is behind of all most advanced countries, in particular in the governmental utilization. I suppose maybe Japanese post-bubble economic depression has relevant with this. But Japan is changing now. By the way, ICT's contribution is not only to economic growth, but also social problem resolution. This slide shows many countries try to improve industrial and social conditions by making use of ICT. For example, ICT is used for energy control in Germany and enhanced worker security on Chile. Furthermore, recent keywords like machine-to-machine, big data, and cloud indicate the utilization of ICT will realize the advancement of business process and new industry creation, and in the foreseeable future, it will advance collaboration across industries, and such advancement is expected to be driving force of further economic growth. Thus, economic and social activities are getting more and more dependent on ICT. This is why information security should be maintained today. These days, we can't make light of cyber threats to ICT environment. For example, more sophisticated and complicated information theft and unauthorized access have happened in Japan. We had some leakage of classified documents from government and defense unauthorized industry through cyber attacks, and the total amount of damage by unauthorized remittance on net banking is notably increasing from 48 million yen last year to 550 million yen this year. Such severe damage can lead to serious threat to national security and social and economic activity. Here, I'd like to introduce our initiative to mitigate such cyber attacks. First, I'll talk about Telecom ISAC Japan. Initially, the concept of ISAC is signed by the President of the United States, Clinton, in 1998. And four sectors, financial services, communication, electricity, and emergency management, have started until 2000. ISAC means Incident Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And Telecom ISAC Japan is Japan's first ISAC founded in 2002. This is a private sector mutual aid organization for Japan's internet service providers, ISPs, to collaborate and cooperate in encountering large cyber attacks. Our goal is to maintain safe and secure communication infrastructure. For this purpose, Telecom ISAC has managed many projects like examination of mechanisms to respond immediately to DDoS attacks and investigation of vulnerability of network device to minimize its damage. Telecom Isaac is also working as one of SEPTAs in Japan. SEPTA is capability for engineering of protection, technical operation, analysis, and response. It's organized for each critical infrastructure, like financial services and transportation, to share and analyze incident information to improve the ability to maintain and recover services of critical infrastructure if serious cyber attacks occur. And each SEPTA is established under SEPTA Council, which all SEPTA members are supposed to attend. This is because acceleration of information sharing across industries is necessary. Telecom Isaac formed the first SEPTA in Japan and has took the initiative in T-SEPTA to strengthen cooperation among telecommunication companies. I think the framework of SEPTA Council is the world leading best practice at the Organization for Information Sharing within or across domains of critical infrastructure. Here are some best practices of public-private partnership in our activities. We had some projects for challenging to prevent and remove malware infection in cooperation with Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, Government of Japan. From 2006 and 2011, we launched the Cyber Clean Center. This project for removing bot infection. This achieved a drastic decrease of bot infection rate from 2.5% in 2005 to 0.6% in 2011. After this, as malware is getting more sophisticated and complicated, our challenges are also coordinated. In 2009, we conducted a reputation database project as a field trial of system to avoid accessing malware-embedded websites. And in 2011, we started proactive response against cyber attacks through international collaborative exchange in order to facilitate international cooperation through constructing international framework of collecting cyber threat information. And now we are compiling the achievements of these comprehensive projects to launch a new big project, ACTIVE. ACTIVE, Advanced Cyber Threats Response Initiative, is the initiative to prevent and remove malware infection. As malware is getting sophisticated and complicated, its infection routes are also changing from network infection to web access infection. ACTIVE's effort for malware prevention responds to such change in malware infection routes. And in cooperation with ISPs, it will try to refrain internet users to accessing malware-embedded websites. This project will start next month, and I'm confident that this is the world's first comprehensive countermeasures against malware infection by public-private partnership. I expect international cooperation through ACTIVE project in the future. Well, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Information security is essential to maintaining safe and secure ICT infrastructure. However, each corporation or each organization has a difficulty of managing information security because of its limited resources. So it's key that all stakeholders should appropriately work together to address this issue. In Japan, Telecom Isaac's activities and public-private partnership are successfully going forward. ICT, especially its free flow of information, contributes to economic growth and solving social problems in the world. Therefore, any measures for cybersecurity could be recognized as the means to ensure the free flow of information in ICT environment. And all can receive economic and social benefits from the internet in such a way that all public and private stakeholders are involved inside and outside the country. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. And thank you for, a lot of the speakers mentioned obviously the importance of security on a free and open internet, and that is the other side of the coin, that people need to be able to trust their user experience on the internet. And thank you for highlighting that so clearly in your talk. I'm now going to ask, this is the open session. Now, this bumps right up against the drinks party, so we're going to do this very quickly. And first of all, I'm going to ask Dongwook Kim, the president of the Korea Information Society Development Institute, to make a few remarks, and then I'm going to throw it open to the floor very briefly.
Thank you. To save time, I discard a lot of the material for the designated discussion. I would like to make just 2 points. First, we need to develop our discussions in regards to the dynamics and the changes of cyberspace and cyberspace's characteristics. With the development of ICT technology and the increasing socioeconomic demands, the nature and the character of cyberspace are constantly changing. Thus, a strategy to respond to socioeconomic development, conditions, and demands should be drawn up. In the same context, while acknowledging the benefits of internet economy, we need to keep in mind several principles related to the ICT application and its impacts. To be specific, ICT should be applied in a way that it leads to innovation and creativity and ultimately contributes to job creation as well as economic growth. On the top of that, ICT needs to be applied in dealing with global issues such as natural disasters, environmental preservation, aging society and democratization, while being utilized to encourage individual participation in these matters. Second, everybody mentioned at the presentation, it highlights the positive impacts the cooperation among all stakeholders at several levels will make. Also, to realize the benefit of cyberspace, the construction of ICT infrastructure is needed at state level, as mentioned earlier. Higher broadband penetration and great access to online service are paramount for the internet economy. At the level of non-state actors, efforts such as protecting data of customers and their own, as well as developing measures to strengthen cyber security, or together with the government, should be put. We need to direct our discussion further towards necessary measures and actions to embrace the OECD principles as a basic foundation to meet all socio-economical demands. Since the principle represents the prerequisites for the growth of internet economy in consideration of various elements and aspects of cyberspace. In addition, sharing skills and policy experiences of ICT development with the developing countries, as well as strengthen international cooperation for capacity building, are good examples of our endeavors to ease digital divide and achieve global prosperity. I'd like to bring up 2 questions in order to lead furthermore discussions. What is values elements and the policy principles? It could be considered generally applicable for the growth and the development internet economy. Another one is to achieve the goal of common prosperity in cyberspace, how we can address ICT development gap and differences in socio-economic conditions among various countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, is Danielle Chris here? Does she want to make some remarks from the ITI, the Information Technology Information Council? No, she's not here. That's good. Thank you, Kim, for your questions, particularly highlighting the digital divide, another aspect of this debate. How do we make sure that everybody participates in the revolution that we have talked about? So I'm going to invite some comments from the floor. I see that John Kampfner from Google has left the building, so I can't call on him. Did somebody have their hand up? Yes, sir. Behind you, yes. If you say who you are and make a brief comment.
한국수산정책포럼 대표 강철승입니다.
My name is Kang Chul-seung. Everything that we are discussing today tend to be focused mostly around advanced nations' ICT levels. But in terms of promoting economic development on a global basis, I think we need to focus more on discussions about how that experience of the advanced nations can be shared with the developing nations. So for developing nation, what kind of considerations can be provided from the advanced nations? I believe that that needs to be the focus of research in the future. I would like to ask your opinion on this comment.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. What I'm going to do is take a few points before asking the panel, not all of the panel to respond, but those who feel the urge to respond. But certainly helping developing nations with their ICT is a very important priority. There's a chap over there, and then I'm going to take the chap who was in front of the first chap.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question...
Who are you?
I'm from Japan. I used to work on development. So how can the ICT contribute to inclusive growth instead of making the rich even richer and making the poor staying poor? I know...
Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The chap in the red tie. You've got to say who you are, don't forget.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ernest Storm. I'm a part of the Norwegian government delegation here. Just a quick question to all the panelists and maybe to Mr. Anderson especially on how to improve the multi-stakeholder model. As many governments have stated that we do support the multi-stakeholder model, and that also the Norwegian government support that as well. We have Mr. Anderson participates in important work in ICANN, and the Norwegian government, together with the Brazilian government, through the Internet Steering Committee that was mentioned, and the Dutch government, are funding a soon-to-be operational secretariat for the Governmental Advisory Committee in ICANN. So that is one way of improving and facilitating participation in the multi-stakeholder model. And I also know that Mr. Anderson participates in a review team in ICANN, which also look into improving the transparency and accountability of ICANN, which is one example of a multi-stakeholder model. But I think there also might be other comments or views of how to improve the working and enhance the multi-stakeholder model in general in other arenas as well. Also within the cybersecurity field. So asking for any comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a question very quickly? Yes, you there, behind my official. Nobody knows who my official is, so that doesn't help, but there he is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question goes to Brazilian speaker. You talked about the multi.
Who are you?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm Dae Kim, the Commissioner of Korea Communications Commission. And then my question is that you talked about the multi-stakeholder model. And then I want to know the experience after introducing that model, how the kind of achievement or what was the difference before and after? Thank you.
Excellent. And last question, I saw a hand. Oh, there are two. Two ladies, which is fantastic. One over there and one over there.
First, thank you for the presentation. I'm the youth representative for this conference. Regarding the OECD's internet policy making, I have a question because to make these policies specialized to the local conditions of the member nation, rather than suggesting a one-size-fit-all model, what elements of that member nation's economic environment do you specifically look at to ensure that these policies are specialized? Yeah, thank you.
And the lady over there.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for the insightful sharing. We have discussed about how the contribution of the internet to the economic growth. But the question is how to make the impacts of the internet use to be sustainable to all elements of the society, particularly those who live in rural areas. In my view, I guess, I'm sorry, my name is Yuri, I'm from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia. In my view, there is a need for us to encourage and empower those society, rural areas, to make use their local wisdom, their local knowledge, and adapt and tailor the information that they get from abroad or imported from abroad to their own needs and their own interests. So I guess there will be one of the ways to ensure the sustainability. But if you can have any view on that, thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you also for reminding me that we have an all-male panel. We had almost exclusively questions from men and very poor representation from women, I'm afraid. But the themes, I think, that were raised in the questions were the digital divide, the divide between developed nations and developing nations, how to include people in the multi-stakeholder model and multi-stakeholder organizations like ICANN, but also how to include people within nations in terms of local and regional differences. A question was directed directly at Jorgen, so I'll ask him to answer that question and then invite one or two panel members who may feel the urge to respond before I wrap up.
Thank you, Ed. And thank you for some very good questions about many of the questions were related, as the chair has said, to the multi-stakeholder model. And it's correctly mentioned, as my Norwegian friend has done, that I have a very interesting job for the time being a member of the so-called accountability and transparency review team of ICANN, which is, and I must explain a little bit the background for this, because it also covers some of the backgrounds for the questions. You may know that ICANN, which is taking care of domain names and numbers, is a non-for-profit, California-based private organization. And this model has been heavily criticized over the years. And some 4 years ago, it was agreed between ICANN, the ICANN board, and the Department of Commerce in the United States that they would make sort of an agreement, a so-called affirmation of commitments, which described the general framework for ICANN's work. Part of that affirmation of commitment was a provision which stipulates that every third year a so-called accountability and transparency review team is established to make sure that the governance of ICANN is duly taking into account the legitimate interests of governments, of stakeholders all over the world. And I've got the privilege of being a member of this second accountability and transparency review team. There are representatives from NGOs, from universities, and also the Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Larry Strickling, is a member. Previous Minister for Communications of Australia, Stephen Conroy, is a member. The Costa Rican regulator is a member.
Okay, we've got to wrap up now, Jorgen.
I will wrap up.
What's the answer?
And the answer is yes. No. No.
Virgilio,
no, but it's important to understand that this is a broad world of different stakeholders taking part in this review. And now I come to what is the possible outcome at the end of the year of this accountability.
In one sentence, it is?
And the possible outcome is that substantial efforts should be made by ICANN to include the developing countries, to include those who are not active in the process so far. And the background for this is that 80% of the policy development processes are managed by European and North American actors. And the same goes for GTLD applications.
Good.
Which
okay, thank you. Virgilio, you are representing the country with the 5th largest internet-using population in the world. Do you want to say how a country like yours and others can help developing nations reach that kind of saturation?
I will talk about 3 initiatives that we are doing to improve the multi-stakeholder model in order to achieve this or to minimize this digital divide. The first thing that we have been working on is to create annual meetings, I would say Brazilian IGFs that are held in the poorest regions of Brazil, so that the steering committee can listen what the people of that specific region thinks about the internet and what are their needs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there is a demand for increasing the representation of the different segments or different parts of the government in the Internet Steering Committee. So what we have done recently is to create subcommittees that are dedicated to specific topics, such as healthcare, education, human capital formation. So these people, this committee can work on that. And finally, we are working to increase the transparency of the decision process of the steering committee. One of the things that we are planning to do is to have this streaming the meeting and having and receiving comments from the population through tweets and things like that.
Brilliant. We'll copy those. Thank you very much. We've run out of time. We have a great dinner to go to. At least I do. I don't know about the rest of you. But thank you all very much for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
To our panel speakers.
A special thanks to Minister for being a great moderator. This, ladies and gentlemen, marks the end of today's program. Like the Minister said, we have a dinner at Harmony Ballroom for those who are invited, starting at 7:30. It's been a pleasure, and thank you. See you all tomorrow. Good night.